to relate a personal example of the split personality of the Hells Angels that I was talking about earlier. It happened about 3 years ago on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, at the time still called the East Village. It was just at the end of the hippie era, and I was doing a news report on how the motorcycle clubs had hastened the exodus of the flower children by picking on them and preying off them. I needed some shots of Hells Angels to go with that story, so with my film crew, I went to their East 3rd Street headquarters. We started filming a group of angels sitting out in front of their building. They shouted at me to stop, and I recklessly shouted back that nobody told me what I could or could not film. Well, with that, about 8 of the angels stood up and came menacingly toward me. Somebody pulled out what looked like a .45. I looked around and realized that my film crew had recognized discretion as the better part of valor and had split. So feeling very vulnerable and alone, I casually kept walking backwards, never taking my eyes off the angels and never stopping my defiant shouts. Well, I finally reached our car, got in, locked the doors, rolled up the windows, and drove away rapidly, accompanied by a barrage of thrown beer cans and obscenities. Now, to this very day, I shudder to think of the ghastly things that would have happened if I had insisted on standing my ground. But since that time, I've made peace of sorts with a man you'll be meeting in a couple of minutes. His name is Sandy Alexander, and he's the president of the New York City chapter of the Hells Angels. But even though there's this apparently sincere goodwill, I don't doubt for a moment that Sandy would have me thumped if he thought it was in the best interests of his club. Now, thumping, incidentally, is beating somebody within an inch of their lives. And Sandy and I have come pretty close to blows over arguments about the preparation and the content of this program. In any case, we meet them in a minute. Violent, defiant, and fearful men. Hells Angels when we come back. My first guests are both presidents of different charters of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Sitting next to me is Sandy Alexander. He's the president of the New York City charter. And next to Sandy is Deacon Proudfoot, who is the president of the Oakland, California chapter. And Deacon, the first question is, what do the Hells Angels mean to you? What are the Hells Angels to you?
Well, it's a family.
What kind of family?
Well, it's a group of people that come together, and like to me, I interpret it as I was raised in the country, and it's the closest thing in the city that I found to country people.
How so?
We all have motorcycles, right? We have a common denominator, our motorcycles. And through those motorcycles, it brought us all together and love for each other.
But a lot of people have motorcycles. Ron Ziegler, the former president's press secretary, has a motorcycle now, but he's not a Hells Angel. What makes the Hells Angels different from other people who...
A brotherhood of men.
How so, Sandy?
It's a brotherhood of men. Like, you know, it takes a man to be a Hells Angel.
What is your definition of a man?
A man. Somebody that stands up for what he believes in.
How and when, Deacon, were the Hells Angels founded?
About 26 years ago in Purdue, California, San Bernardino.
What was the thing that brought the founders together?
Well, I think how it started was like there was a bomber squadron during World War II called the Hells Angels. When the war was over, they got out of the service. They didn't have nothing to do, and they just kind of stayed together and decided to ride motorcycles on the weekends and party and have a good time. And it just kind of, you know, started there and grew.
The movie The Wild Ones came shortly after that, and there were two prime characters, motorcycle riders. One was Marlon Brando, the kind of soft-spoken person that most people identified with.
He was black.
He was compassionate. He was misunderstood. He was all the things that make for a sympathetic character. The other leading role, played by Lee Marvin, was that of the big bad guy. The kind of guy, he was the leader of his motorcycle pack. He was definitely the evil force. He's the bad guy. You know, nobody liked him. Which do you identify with of those two guys?
Lee Marvin.
Why, Sandy?
Why? You know what, first of all, Marlon Brando was an imitation of a director's belief and dream. All he cared about was a broad, right? He forgot about his people. all he, you know, and he rode a Triumph. We ride a Harley Davidson. Lee Marvin was wearing Levi's and a dirty shirt, or with a shirt, you know, his shirt, something he owned, something he believed in, not a director's dream to dress Marlon Brando all in black, you know, and that gave us, you know, and motorcycle people, you know, a thought for everybody that we're all black, you know, wearing black and, you know, bad guys and this and that.
But he was a bully.
He wasn't a bully. He was being himself. He was out for a good time.
But he was out for a good time at the expense of a lot of other people.
I don't think so. Maybe that's what you interpreted. I interpreted it completely different. He was just being himself. You know, when he got busted, right? And he didn't snibble about it, you know. And when he was worried about his people, and like when he got busted, he said, "Tell Mama send me a case of beer."
There are lots of outlaw motorcycle clubs now, besides the Hells Angels. I mean, I don't know how many Hells Angels there are. I don't know whether it numbers in the hundreds or the thousands. Maybe you can.
Lots of them.
How many?
Lots
Oh,
of them.
lots. That's classified information.
1,000, 1,500,
That's
500?
classified information.
Okay.
I know.
Well, what makes the Hells Angels different from all these others? I mean, why are you the most notorious? Why are you the ones that seem to be the example for the rest of your genre?
Because we believe in what we're doing.
But don't the other outlaws also believe in what they're doing, whether they're the stormtroopers from North Carolina or the Breed from Ohio, or wherever they're from, or any of these others?
No, I think they believe mainly in what, you know, what they've read and what they've seen. And see, a lot of the movies and stories, it falsifies. You know, it gives people a wrong impression.
How so?
Well, you know, like in the years before, like let's say in the years of 1966 and in the 60s, right? A lot of things that were wrote about were true, and a lot of them weren't. It was the news media just blew everything up, and a lot of people relate now to what happened then.
Are you saying that the Hells Angels have left this their violent path behind them?
Not really, no. You know, like if it's time to be violent, we can be violent.
Can you think of a situation where violence would be appropriate?
Sure. Excuse me, sir, brother. I could give a perfect situation that, Geraldo, the first time I met you, for correction, right? When you wanted to come up and film us, right? You didn't come up and give us courtesy to come up and say, hey, you know what, I'm so-and-so, I'd like to be introduced to such and such. And when you met, the president or whatever, right? Then he would have said, oh, sure, you could film it. No, you took it upon yourself to film, right? And that's taken upon yourself, right? Taken about from our privacy, right? And you know what? If it's people, but I'd like to be treated with respect. If you don't treat it with respect, then you know what? Shame on you. Then we don't treat you with respect. That's why we chase you down the block, cut your television cord.
But is violence, do you think, the solution to problems like that? I mean, to conflicts like that?
Sometimes words don't, you know, you can only take words so far.
But what if everybody thought the same way?
Probably be a better world.
Wouldn't it be a complete anarchy? Wouldn't it be a situation where everybody was fighting everybody and there was no order
There'd be
and
more
no...
respect in the world.
If the strong were in charge and the weak were
I don't
subjugated?
think, you know what? If you treat a man with respect, the man will give you respect. If you don't treat him with respect, it's on you.
Do you think that the law enforcement officials are clamping down on you after all the sensational headlines, the gang rape arrests, the murder
Let me
arrests?
tell you
and that kind
about
of
gang
stuff?
rapes, right? We never had a conviction for rape in the history of Hells Angels until last year in California, which we got 6 brothers got set up by an attorney general in California to get a position for a political position to get, get himself ahead in politics.
How many times have you been arrested, Sandy?
Oh, several.
How many? Do you remember?
I don't know. I haven't looked at my yellow sheet.
Deacon? How many?
Quite a few. I don't have any idea.
How many Hells Angels are in jail right now?
A lot.
Doesn't that at any time give you second thoughts and maybe say that you should moderate your image and the way you...
work harder to get them out.
How do the Hells Angels support themselves? Now, Deacon, do you have a job, or do any of the Hells Angels have jobs?
Excuse me, brother. You know what? Like, when you go to school, right, I always heard you got adequacy, right? You know, adequacy, you're such and such. There are certain questions you're never supposed to ask anybody, right? You never ask an individual, well, how much money do you make? Or you're not supposed to ask an individual, well, what do you do? Or that, and so, because other people, that's courtesy, right? You know what, like it was told to you earlier, Geraldo, that we all work, right? And like, and some's got jobs and some have old ladies work, you know. I didn't mean to cut you off, brother.
I really believe in etiquette, Sandy. It's just a question that people are curious about because...
Well, I don't go out there asking everybody else how they work, how much money they make.
You can ask them.
What everybody want to know about us for?
Because people are curious about you, because you have made yourselves different. And people are curious about people who are different.
Because we made ourselves different, everybody else is changing, too.
We invited a lot of people who are the alleged victims of Hell's Angels violence onto the show, and we promised to protect their identities and everything else, but they were just too frightened to come on. We asked a lot of law enforcement people to come on, but they said that they would also rather not come on. Fear and the way you generate this aura of fear and make people afraid of you is a real thing, and I think that I personally, it's the thing that I find most objectionable, the fact that you make so many people afraid. Why?
I think most people are afraid because we're sure of ourselves. You know,
In a physical sense, you mean that you could take anybody who...
In a mental sense, I mean, I think we generate, positive, you know, like vibrations, and like most people can't. I don't think they're mentally capable of handling them.
I want to meet some of the other angels sitting in our audience, and their old ladies and their sweeties and children and everything else when we come back. You have this terrible reputation, I mean, in all honesty.
There's some pretty looking women over there.
And I don't understand why they come. Do they come to be raped and abused?
I think they come because we're men. You know, it's
how do they know
like,
that?
How do they know what?
That you're men and not just sadistic bullies?
Well, probably part of it, they're inquisitive to start with, you know, and the ones that are inquisitive leave early, and the ones that come for seriousness and stay for a long time.
We meet some of your brothers and old ladies and sweeties right over here.
You're on your own.
This is Vinny, who I think has the distinction in the New York charter, at least, of being the biggest. Are you the biggest, Vinny?
Well, I weigh about 320, you know, but one of my brothers weighs 335.
Which one is that?
Oh, he's right there.
You want to stand up? Let's see. You don't want to... there he is. 325? Vinny, stand up a second. Let people see... How much do you weigh, Vin?
320.
What do you have back here?
Oh, my knife.
You don't mind if I...
No, go ahead, help yourself, you know. If I did mind, you wouldn't do it anyway, right?
What do you use it for? I mean...
Peeling bananas and oranges and stuff like that.
This is your wife over here, right, Ben?
Yeah, it's my wife right there.
Will you stand up? I noticed that you're with child.
Yeah, we don't know whose child it is, you know. We're going to figure it out.
What kind of... let's see her, Ben. You really block out the whole screen. What kind of life do you think that your child will have with the Hells Angels?
A good one.
But if his life expectancy, like the rest of the Hells Angels, is only 35 years, I mean, how are you going to take care of yourself?
Yeah, you might be president of the United States, you know. You never know, right?
But, I mean, what happens to you if something happens to him?
I'll be taken care of.
By the other fellows?
Well, she'll be taken care of, you know. Whichever way, it's got to be taken care of, right?
Thanks for coming, fellas. Let me go back over here. Are you really proud of them all, Sandy?
Of course.
Thank you both for coming on.
Thank you for having us. Can I say one thing?
Please, Sandy, anything you want to.
And can Deacon say them too, right?
You both take a closing statement, okay?
I just, Sonny's and Foo's interview, we hope that a lot of people, especially in California and the penal system and the board, will realize and be individuals when they see somebody come up in front of a parole board, right, instead of changing it or being influenced by outsiders, man. If you know what, be an individual. If you believe somebody is, not guilty or somebody hasn't done something, then fight for it, because that's what made America America. If you're not an individual, then pack it in. And there's a lot of people that are forgetting about that.
Like, don't convict somebody for, you know, what they are. Convict of what they've done.
Okay. It's extremely difficult to make a valid comment about the Hells Angels, especially when a couple of dozen of them or so are sitting in your studio, but let me try. The secret, I think, lies in something Sandy Alexander said earlier about the movie The Wild Ones. He said that the angels identify not with the compassionate, misunderstood character portrayed by Marlon Brando, but rather with the big bad guy played by Lee Marvin. Now, Marvin's role, as we said earlier, and as you might recall, was that of an arrogant and even sadistic bully. In fairness, and we must be fair even to the Hells Angels, it must be pointed out that many, if not most, of their more notorious exploits have been greatly exaggerated by the media. But even excluding these headline cases, there's a brutally casual, seemingly indiscriminate, and almost inevitable violence about them, and it's as much a part of the Hells Angels world as their motorcycles. When a group of them get together, they seem like barely tamed wild animals. At times, you can ask them to roll over or jump through hoops, and you can even put your head in their mouths. But it doesn't take much cause, real or imagined, for them to abandon this thin veneer of civilization and turn again to their natural state. As Jerry Garcia said, scary is what the Hells Angels are.